Howdy, and welcome to the Buckcast episode number, whatever number it's going to be, because this is the buffer episode. I am recording this episode just in case there's a week where I wasn't able to record or edit another episode in time. So whenever this is released, it's because something went wrong and I needed an episode. Because of that, I'm not particularly going to talk about the current format or anything to that effect, but I do have lots of things to talk about. So let's get started with marketing, with the structure of the company Konami, or rather its Yu-Gi-Oh department. I have opinions and I have thoughts about how they need to change their practices. First of all, I think there should always be 3 supported formats going on simultaneously. Because then, when one of them is terrible, like at this current moment, which I can say because almost no matter what, people are going to think the current format sucks. But one of the formats is probably going to be downright terrible. But then people still have a choice between the other 2 formats. For instance, we'll have standard format, master duel, and then some third format that at the moment we don't really have. That was kind of filled by Duel Links in the past, but Duel Links is just strictly worse master duel. So I don't really see that being an option. Another option is the alternative formats like Common Charity, for instance. I don't really see that being a thing because that format isn't very... That would take a lot of time and setup of them being very intentional about what they put in the common slot moving forward for events. And I don't really know if that's even smart because it's not necessarily a very different format from standard. It's kind of just the same thing, but with a couple little quirks to it. I'm not really sure it's worth doing. I think they should definitely explore making Common Charity a real format and planning products around making Common Charity a better format and releasing ban lists, that sort of thing. I think that would definitely be smart, but I don't think it's the silver bullet I'm looking for. So then we go into the Duel Links for the TCG. I forget its name. You know what I'm talking about. The prepackaged decks that came out, the Battle City box, that product. That one, I really don't think people like. I mean, it has good formats, but it's so different. It's kind of, again, it's basically Duel Links. It's the 20 card decks, the skill cards. It's very different. What I think is our silver bullet third format is Time Wizard. Now, you might be asking yourself, that doesn't make any sense. The whole problem with Time Wizard is that it's not standardized. No one can... It's always different. It's like that's not a format. That is an event at your locals. You're right. That's what it's like now. But I think moving forward, they could make Time Wizard a very legitimate third option. And I think it might be even the best option for a lot of people. Obviously, because why else would we make it? And by the way, Konami, Yu-Gi-Oh, if you're listening and you like this idea, let me know. I'd be ecstatic if you paid me. But to be honest, you don't even need to financially compensate me for this idea. I give you my full permission to utilize these ideas. But please just let me be involved in the process somehow. Whether that's as an employee or if you just give me some benefits like being able to help design some new cards, whatever. Just let me be involved. I think that'd be really exciting for me and would be well worth it for seeing this idea move forward. And that's how confident I am in this idea, is that I'm going to call out Konami and tell them that they should use it. And that idea is this. I think Konami needs to integrate their Yu-Gi-Oh products better. And what I mean by that is, we have a Time Wizard format. Let's start with GOAT, for instance. The Time Wizard format for the next month or so, maybe 2 months, is GOAT format. That is the Time Wizard format. And leading up to that being the format, so all locals have a Time Wizard format tournament, let's say after the normal tournament, as long as they get enough people to sign up. But that Time Wizard format has to be the one that is the current Time Wizard format. Again, for example, let's say it's GOAT. Maybe a week before and during the beginning of GOAT format Time Wizard, in Master Duel, they should have an event that is GOAT format. So that there's a lot of overlap, but maybe have it start a little bit sooner than the actual Time Wizard format. So then people are playing GOAT format on Master Duel as part of this event. They're going to play it. They want the gems. And then they're going to be like, oh, I really like GOAT format, but the event is ending. No problem. Go to your locals and play Time Wizard format. They're going to be playing the exact same format as you were playing in Master Duel, except now you get to play it in paper. And now you might be asking yourself, but I don't own any of the cards. The whole benefit of Master Duel is I can just craft them. Maybe there's even a pack that comes out that has retro cards in preparation for that event going live. But here's the kicker. Here's the integration. They should release products also leading up to the Time Wizard format. So they should release, I'm thinking, a 3-deck structure deck, kind of like the Battle City box sort of thing, where we have 3 different GOAT decks. Maybe that's GOAT Classic, Chaos GOAT, and then maybe a Burn deck, something like that. Just 3, they do some polling, they do some looking around, they figure out what the 3 GOAT decks that would be the easiest that would have the most overlap with other strategies, right? So that the cards you get can be applicable for many different sorts of decks. And then the 3 that are also roughly the 3 most popular decks that people would want to play. And obviously, it's still going to be structure deck style. They're not going to have quite all the cards on them. So if you really want it to be competitive, you should buy 3 of them. But since you're getting 3 decks, the price can still be like, what, $20? And people will feel like they're getting good value, but they actually walk out of there having spent $60 instead of the usual $30. That is 100% more profit. So when you show up, when you play Master Duel, you play the event, you think, wow, this was really fun. I'm going to go play this at my locals. In the event details, it should tell you, by the way, this event is going on concurrently with the Master Duel. This Master Duel format is going on concurrently with the in-person Time Wizard format. Feel free to go check out your OTS store or whatever. And you should have, I'm pretty sure Master Duel already knows your location, so it should just tell you what your local OTS is. And then, so you go there, you play your locals, and then they say, oh, we've got Time Wizard format coming up. And you say, oh, but I don't have a deck. And they say, oh, just buy this. Just buy this product that we already have. Guaranteed you'll be able to build at least a reasonable GOAT deck with one of these. And if you want something more competitive, you can buy 3, bam, you've got the previous best deck. Or whatever. You have the best deck of the format. And then the packs you should get from doing well, and also just, if you sign up for the tournament, you should get one of these packs. And then if you do well, you can get more, just like OTS packs, is a pack that is based around the current Time Wizard format, except it has high rarity cards, right? So again, GOAT as our example, maybe we've got some unique rarity delinquent duos, right? We've got some unique rarity scapegoats, all that sort of thing. A new max rarity for these classic GOAT cards. And also, just in general, I think it should probably be an all foil set, so that no matter what, it'll be an upgrade over the commons you just got in the structure deck. So and I also think that for some amount of time, it should just replace the OTS pack leading up to the event, so that when people go to their local tournaments, they get this pack and they get, oh my gosh, I got this really high rarity Metamorphosis. Maybe I should play a goat deck maybe I should build a deck around this high rarity card I got for Time Wizard format, which is going to happen in a week, right? Gives them enough time maybe to get the cards they need. Of course, that also will probably coincide with the product coming out. And since people own those cards now, they can play Go for them whenever they want, of course. But you also just got a huge amount of profit, and you're also greatly helping this event, this format. And then also, if any regionals or YCSs are going on, they should have whatever the Time Wizard format of the time is as a side event. And then if this does well, maybe we can also have main events that are just the Time Wizard format. So we've got this integration between Master Duel, the TCG products, and Time Wizard format. I think if you do that right, you will have this train that people get on. No matter what they're doing, they're going to get pushed in the direction of doing this third format, the Time Wizard format. Because if they're a TCG player, they go to locals, the pack they get has a bunch of cards that are great for GOAT format and that are really high rarity, and that encourages them to stick around for the GOAT format. And if they don't have the cards, that's fine. They could just buy it right there at the store. They've got everything they need. And then for the Master Duel players, they play the event. They think it's fun. The event ends, and they're like, oh, I want to keep playing. They go to their OTS, and they have all the products they need to build and play. So that's kind of the pipeline, I think. And I think that could be really, really smart. And then to keep interest every couple months, probably roughly the same time period between each ban list. So it's the same sort of deal where it's every format. We move chronologically to the next format in Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe we skip around a little bit. Maybe in the beginning we only go through, GOAT, Edison, Dragon Ruler. We hit only the most well-known formats the first way around. And then we go back and do literally every single format. But whatever the case may be, I think that would be a really, really good idea. And it would make a third format that's really, really engaging for people. This Time Wizard format that is specifically integrated with Master Duel and with product to encourage people to play the format. And also, it's just people already like legacy formats. But the problem is that you have to find people who are all agree to play that legacy format. And doing this, standardizing which legacy format is the format of the time of that day, will allow people to more easily find it. Because it's just all you have to do is find another Yu-Gi-Oh player. You don't have to find a Yu-Gi-Oh player who likes GOAT. You just find a Yu-Gi-Oh player, and if you really want to play GOATs, you can tell that I will buy you this product to get you this GOAT deck. Just play with us. And now here's the big question is, how much do we want to integrate old rules? This is a big problem. I think this actually might be part of what's holding Konami back, which is, what are we going to do about priority? What are we going to do about first turn draws? Are we going to just do it exactly? What about rulings? What about erratas? Are we going to stick with the time relevant stuff? Or are we going to use modern? And I'm personally very torn about this. Obviously, it's good to have your legacy formats be representative of the actual format. But at the same time, it generates a lot of unnecessary confusion. I think the play will be to stick with modern erratas whenever possible and play with rules such as drawing on the first turn, field spell rules, that sort of thing from the time period. I think it becomes a real problem because we aren't going to print cards that have the old errata. We're just not. Even though we're reprinting these cards, we're going to print them with modern card texts. That way they're understandable. But because of that, it makes it very hard to tell those people, oh, but we're playing by this printing of the card that you've never read before. You just have to know. So I think it makes sense to do modern card texts. And only when it is necessary do we allow the pre-errata to exist in that format when it is necessary to even taste what it was like. That is my opinion. And also, of course, this brings about the challenge. Now we have to have judges that actually know about these old formats. But I think that can be done. I think this is worth Konami investing money in to make this work. I think it'd be worthwhile for them to train judges and put incentives forward to get the judges able to do this, because I think it's such a good idea for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! That it would be worth a really big upfront investment. To go along with that, this also might help new players, because especially when it first starts, this time wizard format, these are going to be older formats that are a lot, quote-unquote, simpler. The card texts will be shorter and there won't be as much going on. So that could be a good intro for people back into the game as well. And then they can kind of follow Time Wizard up until they get to roughly the modern format, and suddenly it's not so hard for them to transition back into the real game. Now, that transitions me into the new player pipeline. I think the new player pipeline should be mostly focused around Master Duel, because that is where we are getting most of our new players, in my opinion. Obviously, Konami should do their own research to know what's actually true, but my reading of the situation is that the new players are all coming from Master Duel. And because of that, I think we need to nerf Master Duel. I think Master Duel should be the baby format, basically always, the most agreeable format possible, because if new players have a bad experience in Master Duel, which will probably be their first experience, that could be it for them. That could be the game, that could be all they ever remember, and now they're never going to play ever again. I think that's a very bad idea. I think we should very much promote Master Duel to be very new player friendly. Get rid of as many of the FTKs as you can. Be really harsh about decks that are too strong. And also, I think the ladder needs to be bigger for a couple of reasons. One is just because people complain about it not being competitive enough. I don't really think that's the issue. But for new players, I think there should be like 3 more ranks of rookie, basically. I think if you get win streaks, you should be able to get out of them, right? I think the system should be smarter at identifying players who know what they're doing and pushing them up the ranks, and finding players who are newer to the game, less experienced, and walking them up step by step so they compete with people around their skill level for longer than they do in the current setting. I think that'd be very good for the game. Because it sucks for a new player to be playing in like bronze or whatever, or rookie, and they happen to come across someone who is a competitive player, but they just now downloaded Master Duel. They're playing this insane deck. Maybe they took a break and they lost a bunch of ranks, and now they come back and they're playing rookie with this absolutely insane Eldritch Floodgate deck or whatever the current crazy deck is at the moment. And then that new player gets absolutely stomped and they're like, oh, I don't like this. Maybe I don't like this game. Instead of making it so that once you get past the very bottom rank, you never downgrade below that ever again. You never have to go back into what I'll call rookie ranks, because I think there should be more than one rookie rank. You never go back to the rookie after you get past it, unless you opt to do so, which I think should be an option for those less competitive players. And also, I think that promotes these players who aren't as good to still feel like they're doing well, because they'll actually be climbing up ranks. And instead of just being stuck between rookie 3 and rookie 4, that doesn't make you feel like you're progressing at all. But maybe that's the skill level they're at. But if we just expand the number of rookie, suddenly they're going from, Rabbit, the rookie or whatever, to Dog. I don't know. They're moving up an actual full class instead of just being stuck between a couple numbers. And I think that'll make them feel like they're accomplishing much more. That'll get them much more excited to continue playing and competing. And I think that is a very important thing for these new players. With that in mind, again, I want to make it as easy as possible for competitive players to skip past all that. Whether it be getting win streaks allows you to skip, or if you just have some sort of intelligent thing that lets them skip through it, whatever. On top of that, I think the solo mode needs to be buffed up even more. I think specifically not just the deck solo modes, but the tutorials. Make the tutorials even longer. Make them skippable, of course, because like they already are, but just make them even longer. Really, really baby them, because since everything is skippable, they can skip any chapter they feel like they already know. Why not just absolutely baby the heck out of them? Because who knows, maybe you'll get someone who really needs it. Someone should be able to, without looking anything up, download Master Duel, play through the tutorial, and then be able to competently play through the solo mode. And then if they do that, they should be able to competently play in Rookie. That should be the pipeline. They should not need any outside help. They shouldn't need anything else. That should be it. And the fact that that isn't the case means that there is still more room for improvement. I think that covers most of what I want to talk about the pipeline, about how we can tie that in. I think Master Duel I think they just added, for me, the Unlimited for duel rooms. And I think that is gives people a lot of room to experiment with alternative formats within Master Duel. I think that's very exciting. I hope to see people actually using that to play formats. I don't think I will actually be trying to do that. Maybe by the time you watch this, I already will have done that. But playing old school formats in Master Duel by using that function, I think is a very good idea. Other than that, I think it's probably wise to have more than 3 unlimited formats, but I really think that at least 3 is the way to go. And I think Time Wizard is the third format that we need to be looking at. And I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to integrate all of its different products better, create very intentional pipelines for new players, and also for existing players to move between the formats. And I think here's another thing is esports, right? First of all, a non-Konami related thing, I wonder if it would be reasonable for sponsors of teams to award bonuses depending on how well you actually did in the tournament. This might already be a thing, but I think it would be wise to emphasize this more. For instance, I don't know who all the sponsors are, but let's say YGO Pro Deck wants to sponsor people. They sponsor people and then they award based off of how well those people did in the tournament. That could be a great play for YGO Pro Deck, because obviously the better they do in the tournament, the more likely they are to be making deck profiles and to shout out their sponsor, and generally for people to see it, right? That seems perfectly reasonable. And also, so cynically, from the sponsor's perspective, you can pay them less if they do poorly. So you're really just getting a better bang for your buck. And I think that should be more explored. Maybe it's not right to think of it that cynically, but I think that encourages people to be more competitive and actually allows them to get paid for doing so, which I think is a missed opportunity, is the poor monetization model. But I think we can improve that, not even on Konami's end. Also, I think maybe having outside bounties, for instance, let's say, again, just using YGO Pro Deck as an example, they say anyone who tops an event and shouts us out, like wears our shirt, shouts us out, we will give them this much money. You don't have to make any contracts. You don't have to do anything. They don't have to negotiate in advance. It's just anyone who tops and was wearing the YGO Pro shirt and shouts us out whenever they do deck profiles, stuff like that, bam, they win this much money. Suddenly you have cash prizing without actually having cash prizing. And I think that's a workaround that could definitely be useful in the TCG. Now, for Master Duel, it's a bit more complicated. It's harder to... First of all, the competitive scene in Master Duel doesn't really exist. And when they do it like Duel Links. They're doing this Kaiba Cup style thing, which I think is awful. It's terrible. It is not fun. It's not representative of what the format is actually like. It's terrible. Why is that a thing? It reeks of mobile gaming. It reeks of engineers who do not play Yu-Gi-Oh, but are just looking around at other mobile games and copying it, instead of asking themselves whether or not it actually makes sense in context to do that. I am wildly upset with this system. I think a much more reasonable system is to have a Kaiba Cup style qualifier where you have to play, there's a certain window of time that weeds out the very bottom amount of non-competitive players, right? That couldn't win to save their lives. And then maybe you give people a certain amount of games in the next bracket, the next phase. They have a certain amount of games, and then it's just whatever their win rate was. As long as it's above a certain amount, you move on to the next phase. And then in that phase, maybe we have tournaments. Maybe we have bracketed tournaments, but they are hyper local, right? So obviously you try to scoop it up by population, like, because obviously LA, we don't want everyone in LA area competing together. That's going to be way too many people. It's way too competitive. We should break that up. But then other places like the whole Midwest, like that might all be one tournament, one bracket. But anyway, so you put that, maybe we also have losers bracket, something like that, but we just have a time slot, a generous time slot, where you have to get in and play. And it's a proper tournament. Hopefully by that point we'll have whittled it down to only a very small amount of highly competitive players that are willing to change their schedules to work around it. But if we can do that, suddenly we can have something really competitive. And then you can have it live streamed and also available just in Master Duel. You could maybe during the time the brackets are going on, when you log into Master Duel, the event is, oh, do you want to watch live what is going on in the bracket for your region, right? So then, bam, you open it up, and maybe you can watch the recordings of the replays from matches that are already done, but you can watch the ones that are going on, quote-unquote, live. Obviously, it's not going to be exactly live. It'll probably be just a replay that's being updated as the information is being sent to the servers. But I think having that pseudo-live aspect would be really awesome and would make it very exciting. And then you can have the winners from all the different regions. Maybe those people can compete in a different bracket. At that point, you're at such a high end of competitive player, you can kind of do whatever you want, and they're going to be down for it. They're going to find a way to make it work. And I think that's how esports should be done for Master Duel. Maybe that's a once-a-year event. Maybe that's a once every 2 years event. But just have this sort of KC Cup style, very, very low bar that's just getting rid of the very bottom amount of people, and then give people, you have a certain amount of games during this next segment. As long as you get above a certain win rate, you move on to the next one. And then in this next one, maybe you just do that again. You have a certain amount of games. You have this much time. Play all your games. As long as your win rate's higher than a certain amount, bam, we have determined that you are the top percent of Yu-Gi-Oh player for Master Duel. You get to compete in your local bracket. It'll be at a time and a day that is reasonable for that location. And then you get to play in the bracket. And if you do well, it'll be available for people to watch. It'll be live streamed hopefully on Twitch and also on YouTube, and maybe you can do a good job of trying to integrate plugins so that people can actually, see what the cards are doing, have a very better idea of what's going on, that sort of thing. And you can have commentators. In general, though, you should not prevent other people from streaming it, like MBT and Farfun and such. You should allow them to stream it and commentate, because that'll just, think of it as just publicity. You aren't trying to make money off of this. You're trying to generate publicity for Master Duel as an esport, right? And then you get to the very top, after all of those regionals are done, after all of those regional tournaments, bracket-style tournaments are done, maybe we can even have a loser's bracket to make it a little bit more fair, perhaps. And after all that's done, bam, all of those people, one last tournament at a certain time. They're the most competitive players. They'll find a way. And then the winner of that goes to Worlds, right? Or maybe the top however many people go to Worlds. You fly them out to Japan, you have a big thing. I think that would really help the esports element of Master Duel. Now, when it comes to helping encourage people to do that, it would be good to give them some sort of prizing. Obviously, since Yu-Gi-Oh! Is banned from doing cash prizing, you could do in-game perks like titles and sleeves and rarities that are only accessible to people who made it past the first qualifier, made it past the first win percentage, past the second win percentage, made it past the regional brackets, and then won the global tournament, whatever the case may be. I think it wouldn't be as good as cash prizing, but the perks for it might be enough because of how excited people are to play online. You might not need as many incentives, especially because people don't have to travel or anything. It's a lot cheaper. So I think that's a good place to start on that. So I think what Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to do is they need to broaden the format to make it at least 3 formats. They need to improve the pipeline for new players. They need to improve the pipeline for Yu-Gi-Oh! Players to move between Yu-Gi-Oh! Products. They need to improve the pipeline for esports. They need to make Yu-Gi-Oh! More competitive, more visible to people. I think it's already been said that certain creators, like those on YouTube, would make orgs if it was economical, right? If there's any way they could not lose huge amounts of money on a Yu-Gi-Oh! Org, they would do it. So let's empower those people to do that. Let's set up a system, whether that's through Konami directly or, like I mentioned earlier, by giving out cash prizes for doing a certain amount as part of advertising for these third-party companies. That sort of system could make esports viable for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think that's a very important thing for the future of Yu-Gi-Oh! To help generate awareness and generate the sort of competitive culture we kind of want to be the face of the platform. Not the platform, but of the game. And then, obviously, we should have more other side events. Not every Master Duel event should be this fairly competitive Time Wizard advertisement. But instead, we should have lots of different things. We should have more permanent duel rooms that people can play. I think Common Charity, the NR event, should just be a permanently accessible thing for people to do on duel rooms, because that was so much fun. That sort of thing. In general, I think we just have a lot of room, especially with Master Duel becoming a thing. I think Master Duel could become the linchpin in the next age of Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. I think it is well positioned to allow for amazing integration between products and elevate the entire game in relevance and accessibility. And I think that is something that is sorely missing right now from Yu-Gi-Oh! And now that I've talked for 35 minutes, I realized I think I covered almost everything I wanted to talk about. But this is a good one to ask questions about because, for instance, here's the big question of today is, how do you think they should do Time Wizard format? Do you think they should keep the relevant rules? Or do you think they should only use modern rules to avoid confusion? Do you think they should use old school erratas, or do you think they should use modern erratas? These kinds of questions are probably the biggest hiccup in my plan. And to be honest, I don't have good answers for them. So hopefully, if, for instance, my current idea of doing format relevant rules but keeping modern erratas, if you all think that's a good idea, then maybe there's something there. If not, then we have more room for discussion to try to figure out what that optimal mix of being a clear representation of what the format was actually like, while also being less needlessly confusing. So I hope y'all can help me figure out what that balance is. And yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about on that front. I'm sure there's more that I can talk about. After all, I like these things to be an hour long, so I'm going to keep talking about something. I could talk about stuff that I want to see supported. Here's another one. I want to see more draft. This is another example where you can have a Master Duel event and then transition that into people and paper. I think the Duel City box, although I don't believe it was intended for draft per se, I hear a lot of people use it for that. I think that draft format is dead because it's unsupported, not because it's not interesting. I think people are very interested in playing draft format. I think it's very fun. I think it's something that is definitely missing right now. I think my recurring thing is there needs to be more formats that are officially supported. Draft is one of them. Time Wizard's one of them. Common Charity doesn't need to be officially supported, but it needs to be planned around when releasing new products. Old school formats should be supported. We should have an integration with that. Master Duel. Duel Links is interesting because a lot of people, you can play Master Duel on your phone, but it's not optimized for that, which is very obvious for anyone who's tried to play Master Duel on their phone. I wonder if there's still a place for Duel Links or if it's just dead. I hope that they take the lessons they've learned from Master Duel and apply them to Duel Links. I could see Duel Links being very fun if they just made it more like Master Duel. Master Duel is the modern format, but if they made Duel Links, stay in where it is, it's got a very different rule set. The 3 monster zones, 3 spell and trap zones, the skills, those are all very distinct and they make it very interesting. The problem is the monetization model is just absolutely terrible. So if they adjusted the monetization model to be more reminiscent of Master Duel, I think that would greatly improve that app. I know Konami will be concerned about, people's investments, blah, blah, blah. They knew that they were losing money when they were playing Duel Links. If you make it more client-friendly now, sure, some people will complain, but that will pale in comparison to the amount of people who are actually finally interested in playing the game. It's just not worth comparison. You can give a reward, maybe before you announce this, you absolutely shower people in gyms to kind of reward those players who stuck with you despite the bad monetization model. And then, bam, you flip the switch and tell them, hey, we're changing it to be more like Master Duel. Slowly roll that out. And that could be a huge benefit. Because again, the main problem is just the monetization model is terrible. If you fix that, then suddenly it becomes a really fun alternative format. Also, I don't know how well local play works for Duel Links. If that's not very good, then they should improve that. I think being able to play with people in your local area and that sort of thing is very good. I think maybe integrating it more with local tournaments could be interesting, like allowing people to reveal their location and then playing tournaments with people in their area. And then again, I think everything should just remind people that the TCG is a thing and push them in that direction. I know that the profit margins are higher on the digital properties, but I think the cardboard game is still a very valuable resource as a testing ground for those other platforms, because that's where, for now, that's where all the new cards are coming out. All of them come out in the TCG. And I think that's great. I think that's wise. I think that is a perfectly reasonable way to have this sort of pipeline where the format is probably going to be worse for the TCG players, but they get to experience a more original, because it has only ever existed in the OCG rather than in Duel Links and Master Duel, where it's like, oh no, these cards have existed forever. People have already had a chance to really lab them out. I think that's a good dichotomy there, that although those other products are probably more balanced, the reason they're balanced is because they're not as close to the released. And with that in mind, I think that the OCG and TCG, I believe ban list wise, they should still stay separate. I think it's insane that the decisions that the OCG has made, but that's largely because the way people play Yu-Gi-Oh! In Japan is different. And that's perfectly fair and reasonable. And I don't think it's worth trying to merge the formats in a way that impedes the success it already has in its individual markets. But there is no reason why the products can't be released at the same time. Why is the OCG ahead? In this modern day, with modern supply chains, I am sure they can find a way to have all of the products released at the same time. And that's pretty simple. You just release, for the TCG, you release everything just a little bit earlier, keep pushing it up, just a week earlier for every product until eventually, bam, you're there. You're in line with the OCG. And maybe that transition period's rough, but I think it'd be worthwhile, because now suddenly, rather than everything just being oh, look at what the OCG did, let's copy them, everyone gets to enjoy labbing things out themselves when cards are released and when they're announced. I think that would be very good for the game if all of the in-print Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards came out at the same time. I think that's a much more reasonable system and will help, I think, create more continuity between the different formats, right? Because one of the big problems is because everything comes out sooner in the OCG, that's part of why their format's so different. But if they came out at the same time as the TCG, it'd be more like two distinct formats, because the difference is the ban list. It doesn't feel like it's just trickled down from the OCG. And also I think that with Master Duel, we can have more integration with giving different formats a shot. Again, with events, I would be ecstatic if there was an event that was just the TCG, you know? If they just had an event where Maxi was banned and a couple other cards were changed, where it was just the TCG format, that sounds like a great advertisement for the TCG. Also, it just sounds like fun. And likewise, you can do something similar for the OCG format, where you have an event. Again, I think Master Duel is such a important piece to this puzzle for the next era of Yu-Gi-Oh! With that in mind, let's talk about sevens. At the time of recording, now that we're 45 minutes in, I'll finally mention it. It is September 2021. No, 2022. Don't even know what year it is. It's September 2022, very close to when this podcast started. And sevens is not a thing. I think they released a Switch game for it, but I don't even know if it's available in English. It's just not a format. And I think that's fair, because it's not Yu-Gi-Oh! It is a different game. All the cards are different. The problem-solving card text is different. The format's different. It's just a different game. I think it's weird that Yu-Gi-Oh! Insists on calling things Yu-Gi-Oh! At this point. I understand that Duel Links, Master Duel, OCG, TCG, and Charity, all of these other Time Wizard, all of them should be called Yu-Gi-Oh! I think that's fair. But I think as they continue to develop new things, for instance, Yu-Gi-Oh! Cross Duel, I think it'd be more reasonable to name them something else. Because they aren't Yu-Gi-Oh! Call them Duel Monsters or something. Like, don't pollute the well with this stuff. Because you're creating this impression. I don't know. It feels like the Pokemon problem. Pokemon has just become a series of characters that they can put into a variety of different situations and make different games. Right? There are a bajillion different ways to play Pokemon. The only thing that links them together is these iconic characters. And it's a little bit concerning that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is doing a similar thing with the release of Sevens, with some of these alternative formats, and with Cross Duel. It doesn't really feel like Yu-Gi-Oh! The game. It feels like it's just a brand. Now, I've been talking in this whole video about the importance of improving the Yu-Gi-Oh! Brand, and I stand by that. But I think part of improving the brand is creating separation between things that are and aren't part of a certain campaign, right? One of the problems when you're doing an ad campaign is you have to figure out what is actually going to be part of this. You know, because when we are integrating all of these different formats, like I have suggested, are we putting Cross Duel in there? Are we putting Yu-Gi-Oh! 7s in there? Are we trying to create that sort of pipeline? I don't know. I don't know if those games are mature enough. Master Duel isn't mature enough, but it's such an opportunity, it doesn't matter. We have to mature it as soon as possible because it's too much of an opportunity to pass up, right? So I'd also think that, again, on that note, we need to mature the Master Duel format by making it more baby-friendly, I think, because, again, it's that new player pipeline. But with these other formats, like Cross Duel, like Sevens, they are so distinct from everything else. Sure, maybe you have an event in Master Duel for it to promote it somehow. I can see you doing that for Sevens with some crazy rule changes. Might be a little weird. Cross Duel, I have no idea how you would do that, but whatever. But I don't really see it. I think that moving forward, they should focus on their core products more and the integration between them, which, again, I think those core products should be Master Duel, TCG/OCG, and Time Wizard format. I think that should be the pillars that they build the company on. But speaking of advertising and multi-level marketing, I have another opinion about how they can economically increase the relevance of Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is Netflix. Netflix, Hulu. The streaming wars are kind of coming to an end here in September. Who knows what it's like in the future? But I'd be willing to bet that if Yu-Gi-Oh! Went to a streaming service or whatever and gave them some of the storylines that they have developed in these characters and said, we don't even want profit. Just make something good, keep all the money. And then you made sure that they got the people on there to really do well. Konami has already experienced this with the Castlevania series. Castlevania, I don't know what the deal was for them, obviously. I am not affiliated with Konami in any way. But no matter what they were trying to accomplish, even if they made no money from the licensing, they definitely made money from the advertising. People who have never heard of Castlevania suddenly know what Castlevania is. Suddenly they're aware of Konami and the products they make. And I think that should be a lot more explored. I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a perfect canvas for that, is what I'm trying to say. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has so many different storylines. You can look on YouTube and find, honestly, really terrible animations for some of the storylines that are very not fleshed out, and they've still got millions and millions of views. Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are desperate for the cards they play to know their stories and to be able to experience their worlds. Because we're looking at these card arts and we're like, wow, there's something going on here. The people, whoever is in charge of those storylines and stuff, does a great job. Because it really is very interesting. And I feel like we should be taking, those people are doing such a good job, we need to put them to work. We need to put their efforts forward. We need to allow these streaming services or enforce whatever, even if we're losing tons of money on this, it'd be worth it because you are increasing the relevance, which is so important for a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Being culturally relevant is we live or die off of whether or not people know what Yu-Gi-Oh! Is. There's not this sort of inherent cultural knowledge about Yu-Gi-Oh! I have watched it over my lifetime fade and fade and fade. If nothing is done, the only thing keeping people playing the game are other people. And that's great for free advertising, but it's not good for scale. It's not good for growth. And I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of room for growth and a lot of room for players that aren't, for people who are not yet involved in the scene. I think another good example of this is Arcane League of Legends. League of Legends, of course, that's a little different because they produced it themselves and did everything themselves and did a fantastic job at it. But they made a good show and it severely boosted League of Legends relevance, and a lot of people went and tried to play League of Legends. And League of Legends isn't the most intuitive game. League of Legends isn't super user-friendly. So I think that's a really strong analog for Yu-Gi-Oh! And I think, likewise, we should really be interested in not having these anime where it's just people playing the card game. That's done. That's dead. Very few people, well, I shouldn't say very few. The market for that has definitely, at least proportionally, shrunk. Those can still exist. By all means, Konami continue producing those if they are making you profits. However, where I see the unexplored market, where I see the value, is TV shows, movies, not based around playing the game, but the characters in the game, the storylines that take place in card arts. I think that is a huge opportunity for Yu-Gi-Oh! To expand its cultural influence. I know I would watch it. If it was on Netflix, even if it was awful, I would watch it. Because I'd want to know. I'd want to see, I want to experience it. And if it wasn't awful, that'd be amazing. Then suddenly a bunch of people who have no idea will be able to experience it. Another example, recently for me, Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk the game had a lot of problems with their launch, and the relevance fell off really hard. But then they made an anime, a good anime, and suddenly the players are way up. They're higher than they were at release, I think. That's crazy. That is a huge win for them. And likewise, I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs to get on this train. I have been saying it, I think it has been true for way longer than it has been proven to be true. And now it's proven to be true. There's no more excuses anymore. Yu-Gi-Oh! Just needs to get on it. They need to take these stories and make something out of them. I've been talking about Netflix. I would pay for a Hulu subscription to watch a terrible Yu-Gi-Oh! Show that was based off of the actual storyline. I would pay a actual just flat fee to buy a DVD of it. I would do it because that's how invested I am in the game. Maybe I'm not a very good example since I am a Yu-Gi-Oh! Podcaster. Clearly, I'm already very invested. But I think there are a lot of people like me. Obviously not in the putting content out there. But there are a lot of people with the same amount of enthusiasm I have for this game. And those people want to see these stories brought to life. And they are willing to spend money for it. I think that every time Yu-Gi-Oh! Releases products with guaranteed stuff in them, they always do better, right? We think about these products like core sets and stuff. People only really buy it if there's good stuff in it, right? But structure decks, even really bad structure decks, tend to sell pretty well. I think it's people really like that guarantee of what they're going to get. I recall Dude, stuff like that, other sealed products, people really liked that. I think about non-card stuff, but like the mats and the card sleeves. Even though the card sleeves were terrible, they were not good card sleeves. I think it's very good that Yu-Gi-Oh! Introduced double sleeving, because without double sleeving, it is really not practical to use the sleeves that they sell. But even though they were bad, people still bought them. I still bought them. And I don't even like double sleeving. But it's because it was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Product, official from Konami, and I wanted to represent, and I wanted to support. But I don't want to feel like I got scammed. Because a lot of the time when you buy a sealed product, you feel like you got scammed. Because you're kind of promised that the stuff you're going to get out of this has a certain monetary value. But when you buy a mat, you aren't buying it to resell it most of the time. You're buying it because of its inherent value. And likewise, and I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, they're so used to not being able to have that choice, not being able to get that inherent value, that they're itching for it. And a show, even if it's bad, it's got inherent value. Inherently, you will get to see the stories that you have seen on the card backs being portrayed in a interesting medium. That is inherent value, and I think people are absolutely chomping at the bit for it. I think that it's a huge waste that it's not already been done. And there's so many things you can do. The thing that obviously comes to mind is the dual terminal storyline, right? And people absolutely go bonkers for it. People love it. And if you made that a thing, here's another amazing idea. It doesn't just work one way, right? It's not just people who play the card game are being pushed to watch the show because they're aware of the card game. And new people will see it because, oh, this is interesting. I'm going to watch it. Oh, I'm going to play the card game. You can you can introduce new characters. I assume that will happen anyway. Whoever you give it to isn't going to just want to use the characters you provided. They're going to want to make their own new characters. And those new characters can then become cards. You can make a product based around just the new characters that were introduced in the story, in the season of the show, or in the movie, whatever. You can make products around that. And now little Timmy, who just likes the show, will want to buy that product because he'll look at it and he'll see, oh my gosh, it's got my favorite character from the show slapped across the front of it. I think there's so much money to be made here. And there's so much notoriety to be gained. It just seems like a win-win-win situation. Obviously, there's inherent risk involved, but I just think it's an obvious risk worth taking. Speaking of little Timmy, that kind of reminds me about this vertical integration thing for Time Wizard format. One of the concerns has always been when selling new products that may or may not include banned cards, is that little Timmy will buy it and he'll play with those banned cards. And then he'll get mad, he'll get upset, and that'll be the last time he ever plays Yu-Gi-Oh! Well, newsflash, kids play with banned cards all the time. People give them banned cards, they find banned cards, their parents have Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards from when they were a kid, and they give them to their kid, they got banned cards. Kids are playing with banned cards literally all the time. It happened to me, it happened to everybody. There's no reason to be afraid of that. Especially when you're printing the cards in line with the format where they can be played. You're not even just giving them a banned card that, oh, you can use this in a historical format. No, you're like, you can use this card in the Time Wizard format that is going on right now. That is such a obvious play. I just wanted to address that concern now that it came to mind about little Timmy, about kids, about young people who might not understand that some of the cards they're getting are not playable in the standard format. I think even if you're still afraid, there are still things you can do to mitigate that. One of them is just make them tournament entry packs. Make them the equivalent of an OTS pack. Now, only people who are actively competing, who know the ban list, are going to be the ones getting these cards. It's not going to be a surprise for them. They know what's going on. And if you are going to sell them, you can just kind of tuck them away a little bit. you don't have to put them front row and center if they're not targeted towards the quote-unquote mainstream audience. So I think those are my thoughts about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game as a product. Now, again, because this is the something went wrong podcast episode, it's very possible I will have talked about this stuff before you see this, right? But just know, this is my first take. This was recorded on September the 23rd at 2 p.m. And if I have said things since then, you can go ahead and debate for yourself. The fact that certain things I say, there will hopefully be more developed versions of these ideas, right? Hopefully they'll be better. But if they're worse, then you can just say, oh no, you had it right the first time, Buck. Look at this you just posted that was recorded beforehand. You had it right here. This is how you should have this is how we should do it. So hopefully that's just a way for y'all to make a comparison between how my opinions might have changed, and y'all can kind of decide between them now which is the better opinion. But I think that covers everything I wanted to talk about. Hopefully this episode is a little bit more timeless. Well, hopefully it isn't. Hopefully before this ever goes live, some of these concepts will be applied. Because I think, again, it's just so important for Yu-Gi-Oh! These are just obvious things that they should be doing to improve the accessibility of the game, the awareness of the game, the competitiveness of the game. I think this just really hits everything that you want from a marketing perspective, all of the things I've laid out. And I hope that they do them before this comes out. But even if not, or more likely, I expect that they won't have done that when this comes out. So hopefully in that way, I expect this to be a little bit more timeless than some of the other content I will post, which is why this is the Something Went Wrong episode. So thank you for listening, and have a nice day.